So those are the 5 tenets. I invite you to think about them and to take what works for you and again, scrap what doesn't work for you. I encourage you to journal about some of these questions, to maybe journal your own tenets, your own life guidebook or instruction manual. Talk this out with friends and family. Really get into what are the values and priorities and definitions that guide your life. What does success mean to you? What does joy look like? What does a fulfilling life look like to you? Hello, my friends. Welcome to It's All Magic. I am your guide, your host, and your friend, Devin Hine. And here we'll be discussing how to make your life truly feel like magic. I believe that our very existence on Earth is nothing less than a miracle, and that we all have so much potential to learn, to grow, to experience, and to create during our short time here. It is both my passion and my pleasure to walk this path of life optimization by your side, where we'll discuss topics like passion, purpose, intuition, manifestation, physical well-being, and much, much more. I'm a yoga teacher, a meditation and breathwork facilitator, and a national board certified health and wellness coach. But more importantly, I am an eternal optimist, a lover of life, and a forever student. It is my hope that with each and every episode, you too will finally start to believe it really is all magic after all. Ready to dive in? Let's do it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this week's episode of It's All Magic. As you will have just heard from the intro, I am your host, guide, and friend, Devin Hine. And today we have a really fun topic. I am super excited about this one. Granted, take that with a grain of salt because I will probably say that every week. A, I'm a very excitable person, and B, I'll only record podcast episodes that I'm excited about, that I think you guys will enjoy too. So that is kind of what we have going on today, just a good topic. So you might be wondering, what are we discussing today? So this is a fun one. I have written down 5 almost tenets or beliefs that help to guide my life. They help to guide my decisions. They help to kind of craft my principles when choosing one option over the other. You know, so many of us wish that there was some sort of instruction manual or guidebook for life, but there isn't. And so throughout life, we almost create our own. You know, we hear opinions and preferences from family members, friends, role models, but at the end of the day, you have to create the guidebook that works for you and your own values and preferences. So today, I am sharing with you nothing less than my life guidebook. And by that, I mean just 5 very simple beliefs or kind of basic truths that I try to live my life by and remind myself of through all the ups and downs in life. So my hope today is that these 5 basic truths will inspire you in some way and perhaps guide you to crafting your own life guidebook. After all, there are so many times when we need a good reminder of what we believe and what we value and what we prioritize in life. So these 5 are mine. Let's dive in. And I will also say, if you're watching this, I have some notes on my lap here. So if I'm looking down, I'm not looking down at a dog or my feet or whatever you might think. I have some notes. I want to make sure I don't miss a single thing because these principles are really important to me. And in any capacity that it might be able to help you, I want to make sure that you have all the details so that you can think through it on your own. So, basic truth or tenet number 1. Your existence on this planet is an absolute miracle. I will repeat that. Your existence on this planet is an absolute miracle. The very fact that you are alive right now, breathing, the fact that you woke up this morning, even if you've done nothing cool or impressive. You really are miraculous. You are magic. And I will kind of break this down for you. So statisticians have said that the probability of your birth was about 1 in 400 trillion. So that number is incomprehensible from a human perspective. I mean, my brain, I don't know about yours, but my brain can't really wrap itself around that number. So what people online, thankfully, have done for us is they have tried to break that down further and make it more comprehensible from our point of view. So apparently, winning the lottery has about a 1 in 300 million chance. So your birth is the equivalent of winning the lottery over 1 million times. So your parents are the luckiest people on the planet. You are the luckiest person on the planet. You are the lottery. I will repeat that. This is my new basic tenet number 1. You are the lottery. I am the lottery. So it is such a small chance that you were born because, think of this for a second, the probability of your great-great-grandparents meeting, falling in love, having their children who were your great-grandparents, who then had to meet, fall in love, have their children who were your grandparents, who then had to meet, fall in love, have their children who were your parents, who had to meet, fall in love, blah, blah, blah. You get it. So that alone is such a small chance. I mean, think about the millions of decisions that we make every single day, and somehow all of those people in your lineage made decisions that guided them to meet exactly the right person at the right time. They had their children at exactly the right time. So it's really incredible when you look at it from that perspective. And then if you go even deeper, so that's just your birth. But the fact that you are even here right now, living the life that you're living, listening to this podcast, whatever you do for work, or if you're in school, whoever you are, the probability of that happening is even smaller. It is infinitesimally small because, as I just mentioned, we make millions of decisions every day, month, year, you name it. And so all of the people who have made decisions that have impacted your life, you making decisions that have impacted your life, the world simply having certain environments that have kind of shifted you or guided you to make one decision over another, all of these things have led you to exactly who you are today and exactly what you're doing today. So if you add up all of those probabilities, I'm not even going to try. I'm not a statistician, and I'm pretty satisfied with this whole 1 in 400 trillion deal. That to me sounds pretty impressive, so I'm cool with that. But my point, again, to kind of wrap this up, is that you are a miracle. You are magic. You are the lottery. You are the winner of the lottery. You are lucky. I mean, the fact that you're here is just mind-boggling. And on one of the websites that I read when I was kind of prepping my tenets, a statistician actually wrote, "We are statistically impossible." So the next time you worry about a feat that sounds impossible to you, just remember that you, my friend, are impossible, and yet you're here after all. So that is tenet number 1. And I think when you start from the foundation of this is magic, it's all magic, we are miracles, the world starts to look a lot more sparkly or whatever you like. I know my sister doesn't like sparkly, so whatever her version of magic looks like, I hope it makes it look that way to you too. So moving on to tenet or belief or principle number 2, we have this. Everyone, every single person has unique strengths, gifts, and talents that the world can benefit from. Okay, so in most religions, they actually believe that you were born because the world needed you at that point in time, at this point in time. So before you were born, there was almost a hole, a gap, something missing in the world. We needed your unique strengths and gifts to come into the world and have the impact that you will have had, and are currently having. So we desperately need you. We depend on you. We rely on you. And by we, I mean the people of the world, the earth itself. So imagine for a second if we did not have Martin Luther King Jr. during the American Civil Rights Movement, okay? Or we didn't have Mahatma Gandhi when India was seeking freedom from British rule. Or better yet, if we didn't have Marie Kondo during our current era of minimalism and organizational interest. So no matter how important, unimportant, big, small you think your skills or strengths are, there is no rating scale for strengths. There is no report card. There is no grade. There is no strength greater than or less than another strength. And your particular strengths are desperately needed at this point in time. So going back to this example of Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi, Marie Kondo. So Marie Kondo, if you haven't heard of her, she is kind of the organizational genius. She has a few books. I believe one is called, maybe it's The Art of Tidying Up, or The Life-Changing Art of Tidying Up, something like that. And she is all about getting rid of the things in your house that don't bring you joy, figuring out ways to organize and kind of keep your life and your home tidy. And she herself has gone viral. I mean, her books, her videos, everything, because her unique strengths are needed. And yet, my friends, what I'm telling you is her strengths of being able to organize a drawer are no less important than the strengths of someone like Martin Luther King Jr., who could inspire massive crowds on a stage. So again, there is no grading scale, there is no report card for strengths and passions and interests. They're all important, and we need them all. So one of my favorite quotes to kind of wrap up this point is by a man named Howard Thurman. He says, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and then go do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive." So I'll let that sink in. So again, we don't need every person to come into this world and say, "Oh, well, I should do this. The world needs that." Yes, we should always be looking to see how we can better serve the world and communities around us. But you don't have to shape yourself or mold yourself to fit something if you are not that. What we need is for you to be the best you, truly the best version of your unique self, and to use that in this world. Because again, we have Martin Luther King Jr. and Mahatma Gandhi and Marie Kondo. We don't need another Marie Kondo. We need you. And even if you have some similar strengths to Marie Kondo, you will do it in a different way than she did it because you're a different person. So even to touch on the point of oversaturation in an area or saying, "Oh, that's already been done. Don't bother." Hey, there's always room for more. I think that success is not a finite resource. I think that when we all focus on what we're good at and what we naturally kind of resonate with or gravitate towards, the success will come. And that will be one of my tenets later on. So I'll kind of pause there with that teaser. But the point is, use your unique strengths. You have them for a reason, and we have you for a reason. Okay, so that was tenet number 2, that everyone has their unique strengths and gifts that the world can benefit from. Number 3, this is where it gets really fun, I think. Joy is the biggest indicator of your unique strengths and your unique path. So I think that your emotions, whether something brings you joy, whether it brings you not joy, maybe it even brings you lethargy, boredom, maybe you're kind of indifferent about the thing. These are all helpful pointers and indicators to guide you to the right path for you. Okay, so again, we all have those unique strengths and gifts, and one of the ways that you can find yours is by following your joy. So I've written down a few kind of principles or helpful tips to help you figure out what your unique strengths and passions are if you're not so clear on them already. So the first one, what comes naturally or easily to you? So what is something that when you do it, people might say, oh, you make it look so easy, or you just naturally do it even without being asked, maybe without being paid, whatever it might be. What is that thing that is just kind of core to who you are and what you naturally gravitate towards? So one way to kind of answer that question is to often ask yourself, what did I do as a child? Or what was I interested in as a child? So for me, for example, my parents would often find me in our little playroom. I would be fake teaching an imaginary classroom. So I would be holding up one of my children's books. I would be, opening it up to the class as teachers do. I would be reading the book. I would ask them questions. I've always loved to teach, to read, to share words, share my voice with others. That's always been a huge part of who I am naturally, to the point that I did that when I was 3 years old. So if you want to ask your parents or just think back yourself to what did you do as a child? What comes naturally to you? So that is the first question you can kind of ask yourself to figure out what is it that is your unique strength or gift. Now, the second one is that, I'll phrase it as a question again. What thing that when you do it, it makes you feel so good that you often enter into a state of flow where you kind of lose track of time and space. You are in another realm, you are in your own world, and afterwards you feel really good. Like you feel aligned. This thing is so clearly meant for you. Okay, so if you can kind of answer that question, you might get clear on what is bringing you joy. As I mentioned earlier, joy, I think, is the biggest indicator that something is meant for you and meant for your path, that it's a strength you have, that it's a gift that you're meant to share with the world. So for me, one of the things that makes me feel that way is writing or, once again, teaching. And that is a huge reason why I've started this podcast. I love speaking with friends, strangers, colleagues, family members. I love going on these long, deep tangents and contemplating the big ideas. That's what I love to do. And so because when I do that, when I'm sitting on a couch late at night with a cup of tea and a friend, and we are talking about space and astrology and intuition and alignment and all of these things, I lose track of where I am and I am in it. So that to me is a clue that doing more of that kind of thing is right for me and my path. So the third thing that you can ask yourself to figure out what is meant for you, what is your unique strength or path that feels aligned. What is it that people naturally come to you for? What is it that people naturally compliment you on? And what is it that when people notice this thing about you and say something about it, you feel really seen? You know that they know you. They have seen you. So think about that for a second. Are you the person that everyone comes to for relationship advice? Or are you the person that people come to for cleaning tips or for help organizing their kitchen? Are you the person that people come to when they have some sort of really daunting business project and they need someone to help them break it down or come up with a timeline or think about it in a different way. It can be a million things. It can be things that I have not mentioned in this podcast because there are far too many to mention. But what is it that when you do this thing, people say, oh, that's her thing or that's his thing? It doesn't even come with a second question. They just go to you for this thing. They know you are the go-to guy or gal or whatever for doing that thing. Okay. So for me to kind of round that out, I do a lot of kind of spiritual coaching and helping people reframe things in more of an optimistic, light point of view. And so again, a lot of the things that I'll be doing on this podcast, and the reason I started this podcast is because for me, when I think about those three questions of 1, what comes naturally or easily to you? 2, what was 2? What makes you feel really good to the point where you enter a state of flow and lose yourself? And 3, what do people naturally come to you for or compliment you on? That's why I've started this podcast, and that is why you too can figure out what works for you. And I also want to clarify that everything I'm talking about today does not have to be what you do for a career. It can be things that you do with your friends. It can be things that you do in your free time just to fill up your own cup alone. So it doesn't have to be monetized or be your job, your career. It can be whatever you make it. And oftentimes, as I've kind of mentioned, your unique strengths and gifts are the things that you automatically do, whether or not it's a job or not. Okay? And I'll kind of get to that in my tenet number 4. But just to round that out, it is that joy is the biggest indicator of your unique strengths, but that there are those 3 main ways that you can figure out what those passions are. And at the end of this podcast, I will repeat one last time the 5 tenets, those questions, so that if you want to do a little journaling, if you want to ask these questions of your friends, your families, your partners, I highly recommend that you take some time to do that. So moving on to tenet number 4, we have this. You cannot escape from your passions, your strengths, and your path. If something is meant for you, it will come back for you time and time again. And as I was starting to mention with the 3rd tenet, that is why I have even started this podcast. So I began my career in health and wellness and spirituality. I was doing a lot of health and wellness coaching. I've been a yoga teacher for seven years now. Wow. I have been teaching meditation and breath work equally for quite some time. And no matter how hard I tried to explore other areas, or no matter how hard I might have tried to escape when things got really difficult, it always found me again. And I'll give an example. So as I just mentioned, I've been in the health and wellness and spirituality scene for quite some time. I did it for a few years right out of college. And then a couple years ago, I hit a total point of burnout. I felt like my ideas weren't flowing as well. I just honestly felt really lonely. It was the middle of the pandemic. I was working as a solopreneur all by myself, and things were just not feeling in flow like they once had. And looking back, I'll share that I think a big part of that is that I started shoulding on myself. I don't know if you've heard this quote, but people will say, don't should on yourself. What that means is I had gotten into the habit of saying, oh, I should do this with one of my programs, or I have to do this with one of my offerings, to make it more popular or to better monetize it. And I think the more I shoulded on myself, the further away from my true path of alignment I got. And so it got to the point where I truly felt like, wow, so I guess this isn't meant for me anyway. And I was heartbroken and honestly really confused and lost. I mean, as I've been talking about, I've always felt like a lot of things that I have done in the health and wellness and spirituality world have been things that naturally resonate with me. I naturally gravitate towards things that people naturally compliment me on. It's been my comfort zone, my safe place, my thing. And so when I hit this point of feeling like, oh, so this isn't it for me, I guess, I was really sad. It was a tough time. And so what I ended up doing is thinking about everything that I felt like I was kind of missing in my life, things that were not feeling aligned. And I started listing out things like, maybe having a team, having a little bit more stability, security, a boss that could help inspire me, mentor me, a steady paycheck. So all of these things that I wasn't experiencing at the time, I started craving those things and feeling like those things would be the answer, because in my mind, I was so clearly off my path. Nothing felt aligned. Nothing felt good. Nothing brought me joy. And so I ended up soul searching, which means interviewing for many, many different companies. And I finally landed at a company that I'm still at today currently. But I have to share, as I had said in my first episode of the podcast, that a few months ago, I more or less had a reawakening, a re-epiphany that health and wellness and spirituality is so meant for me that I cannot escape it. And looking back, I mean, it's even laughable to me that I thought I could, that I felt like, oh, maybe I'll try this corporate thing and something else will be a good fit. And I'm so glad I've given it a shot. But my goodness, you cannot escape what you're here to do and what you're here for. So during my time at this company, just to give a few helpful pointers, I have led quite a few team meetings because, as I mentioned, I love to present and facilitate groups and share and kind of get people out of their shell a little bit. And at the beginning of all of the team meetings that I hosted, I would guide them through meditation and breath work. And the first time I did it, my team thought I was very woo-woo and very crazy, but they loved it. I mean, they came out of their meditation and breath work, 5 minutes later, and they felt like different people. Their energy, their vibration had completely shifted. So even in the midst of, crazy, busy corporate culture, I could not bring meditation and breath work in. Another example that I'm actually still kind of working on right now. So a few months ago, one of the executives at my company had posted a list of some of the books that had changed her life. And she said, hey, let's make this a company-wide thing. How about if there are any books that have changed your life, you post it here so that everyone has access to it, and we can, offer comments on each other's recommendations. And so, of course, I look on there and I see a lot of books about business and leadership and team dynamics and discipline and grit and, program management, project management. And I go ahead and recommend one of my favorite books of all time, which is Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss. And it's a fantastic book. It's written by a psychiatrist who more or less ends up discovering reincarnation and past lives through some of his patients that he has in kind of a hypnotic trance. Because at the time, he's trying to regress them back to childhood days so that they can kind of talk about their trauma and he can heal them that way. And in some of his clients, he finds that they regress far past this life into periods of time that we do not currently live in. So it's a really fantastic book. I couldn't recommend it enough. But the point is, I recommended Many Lives, Many Masters on this company-wide Wikipedia post about books that have changed your life. And my goodness, it stood out. There was actually a colleague of mine that I had just barely crossed paths with. And a few weeks after that, maybe a month after that, she reached out to me and she said, listen, I know, we don't really work that closely together. We haven't really met, but I have to tell you, your book recommendation completely changed my life. She said, I've been a little bit on this spiritual journey, spiritual awakening. And when I saw the book you recommended, it really resonated with me. I looked up what it was about and I felt like, oh, I'm being called to read this. This sounds fantastic. And so she did, and it put her, down the rabbit hole. And so since then, we have been messaging back and forth. We actually just met on Zoom for the first time last week. And, I share with her other books. I share with her podcasts. We're just kind of sharing life with each other. And it's life on a very spiritual, deep, introspective, inquisitive level. And I don't get to have those conversations with a lot of people at my company. And so the point is that even when asked by an executive to please post the book that has changed your life, I can't get away from the fact that the things that have actually changed my life are all within the realm of health and wellness and spirituality. I also have these meetings on my team where we are not allowed to talk about work. So they're meant to be kind of fun team meetings, and we have them every Friday. And I have led quite a few. One of them, I think it was last Halloween, I read tarot cards for everyone. And a few people came in skeptical. And by the end, they felt like, wow, well, whether I believe it or not, that definitely resonated with me. And so people loved it. And they've actually requested more tarot card readings since. Another one of my Friday meetings, I essentially read through everyone's astrological birth charts and really broke down their signs, their planets, and what it all means, why they are the way they are. And again, even the ones who thought I was woo-woo and witchy at the beginning left loving it and having learned a lot about themselves. So as you can see, even in my corporate tenure so far, I cannot escape who I am and why I'm here and the strengths that I have. No matter what kind of environment you're in, you end up bringing yourself and your passions and your way of doing things to the table. There's no way to escape it. Trust me, I've tried. So that, of course, is tenet number 4. And to wrap up that piece before I go on to the 5th and final tenet, I will share with you this quote that I had come up with a couple years ago that I used to share with some of my health and wellness clients and my yoga students. I would say, you are made of what you're made for. So essentially what I mean is that every strength, preference, particularity, quirk, everything that makes you you, you are that way because you were made to use those preferences and quirks and strengths and gifts. So it's all meant to be. You were here for a reason, and you were beautifully and perfectly crafted to be able to fulfill that purpose, to fulfill that reason for being here. So whether you are someone who loves routine and structure or you absolutely hate it, whether you are a morning person or a night person, whether you love to research and really dig into the details of things, or if you're more of a big picture dreamer, whatever it is, again, going back to what I said earlier, there's no report card here. There is no better or worse or the right way of being. We are all different and unique and beautiful and perfect the way we are because you are made of what you're made for. So just remember that. You don't ever have to misshape yourself or mold yourself into something that you're not because you think you should be a certain way. No, you should be you. Always. That's all we can ask. Okay, so that's number 4. Again, we get into some really light, kind of small talk in this podcast. So number 5 is this. When you are in alignment, when you're doing what you're good at, and when you are doing what you enjoy doing, you shall succeed. There is no failure. And I get that this one could ruffle some feathers or confuse some people, but I suppose I should start with this. The way we define success largely ends up defining the way we live our lives. So if success to you looks like a very tight box where you can't really get outside of that box and still be successful, you will forever live your life trying to fit into that box, whether or not it's right for you. So the way that I want to define success for my own life, you can borrow parts of it, you can scrap it, you can do whatever resonates with you. I would like to define success as living a large percentage of my life in flow, in alignment, in utter joy, surrounded by people that I love and who inspire me, and serving the world using my strengths and gifts. So if I'm spending most of my time like that, where I am waking up in the morning excited to take on the day because I know that I'll get to do things that bring me joy and that I'm good at and that are helpful for those around me, my goodness, if that's not a good life, I don't know what is. And so I want to really challenge you to create a definition of success that resonates with you. And if you've only heard one tight definition of success and it doesn't feel good in your body, scrap that. It's not for you. So again, allow your joy, allow your alignment, your intuition to be your guide. Those things are meant to be your North Star in this life. And if something does not feel right, perhaps it's not right for you at least. So I challenge you to redefine success in a way that fits you. So I will summarize here. I will restate the 5 tenets and some of the questions that you can ask yourself that you might want to journal about, ask a friend, family member, etc. So the 5 tenets that I use to guide my life, my decisions, that I use to stay aligned are the following. Number 1, your existence on this planet is an absolute miracle. Number 2, everyone has unique strengths, gifts, and talents that will and should benefit the world. Number 3, joy is the biggest indicator of your strengths and your path. And I'll have a little asterisk next to that, which are the 3 questions you can ask yourself if you're a little unclear or lost on your strengths, your passions, the path that's meant for you. So the first question, what comes naturally or easily to you? So you can think about what you did as a child, for example, or what you naturally do for friends because it's just natural. It's just who you are. The second question is, what makes you feel really good when you're doing that thing to the point where you enter a state of flow and you forget about all time and space? You are in your own world. And then the third question, what is that thing about you that people naturally go to you for, compliment you on, or when they do compliment you on it, you feel seen and you know it's true. It's who you are. So those are those 3 questions. Now back to the tenets. Number 4, you cannot escape from your special gifts and the path that is meant for you. And then number 5, when you are in alignment with who you are and what you should be doing, you shall succeed. there is no failure. So those are the 5 tenets. I invite you to think about them and to take what works for you, and again, scrap what doesn't work for you. I encourage you to journal about some of these questions, to maybe journal your own tenets, your own life guidebook or instruction manual. Talk this out with friends and family. Really get into what are the values and priorities and definitions that guide your life. What does success mean to you? What does joy look like? What does a fulfilling life look like to you? So I want you to really ask yourself these questions. And if you enjoyed this podcast episode, if you are excited to hear more thoughts and big questions like this one, please, please, please like this podcast episode on YouTube if that's where you're watching it. Subscribe, and if you could rate and review the podcast, that would mean the world to me. I love hearing the direct feedback, and it also really helps others to find me and us, because we're really building an inquisitive and magical community here. And as I say with every podcast episode, I hope that through this episode, you too are finally starting to believe it really is all magic after all. Okay, with that, I will bid you farewell. I'm already excited to see you next week, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye.